Nobody cared about Caleb Johnson, just another young black man making deliveries at the upscale Los Angeles gym where famous businessmen and athletes flaunted their muscles and egos. But when boxing champion Ryan Coleman called him into the ring, wanting to show who the real man was, what followed silenced everyone's laughter. A clean, quick and precise punch, and silence filled the gym. Ashamed and consumed by rage, Ryan demanded a rematch. 3 rounds, cameras rolling, a chance to put the delivery guy in his place. What he didn't realize was that those hands carried not just boxes, but a legacy. Behind Caleb's calm demeanor lay the hard training inherited from his father, the late nights in makeshift gyms, and a hunger for victory that no privilege could buy. The next day, the entire country would discover what happens when someone confuses humility with weakness. Before we continue this story, please comment on which city or country you are watching from, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. This is just the first twist in a story that will surprise you. The sun beat down on the concrete jungle of Los Angeles as Caleb crossed the narrow alleys of the south-central neighborhood. Sweat dripped down his face, stinging his eyes, but he didn't slow down. At 17, his lean, agile body moved with almost musical precision as he shadowboxed among graffiti-covered walls and iron staircases, throwing punches in the air against imaginary opponents. 1, 2, dodge, hook, he murmured, his breath steady despite the stifling heat rising from the asphalt. Caleb wasn't training for a scheduled fight. He trained because fighting was part of who he was. Each punch was a silent conversation with the past, a tribute to his father, a man whose memory faded a little more each year. All that remained were the old VHS tapes, worn from so much viewing, and a pair of faded boxing gloves that still held his father's woody scent. In the distance, a church bell in the neighborhood rang, breaking the rhythm of the combinations. Caleb looked at his watch, and his heart raced. He was late for the delivery. In a hurry, he threw his backpack over his shoulder and ran to the bus stop, managing to catch the bus that was heading downtown. There, another world awaited him. Glass towers, tailored suits, hurried steps, glances that never met. In the midst of that universe of power and vanity stood the Coleman Boxing Arena, the elite gym where champions trained and celebrities pretended to sweat. Caleb had passed by many times, but had never dared to go in. Today would be different. His delivery route included a package for someone at Coleman Arena. As soon as he pushed open the heavy glass door, the air smelling of leather and exertion enveloped him. The sound of the punching bags echoed, mixed with the dry rhythm of the blows and the encouraging shouts of the trainers. For a moment he forgot why he was there. In the center, the ring dominated the space. 2 fighters faced off, but only one seemed to control the fight. The precise and calculated blows came from a man with a magnetic presence. "That's Ryan Coleman," someone nearby commented, noticing Caleb's admiring gaze. "Undefeated in 23 fights. The guy is spectacular." Ryan, around 28 years old, displayed a physique sculpted by years of training and discipline. His short hair, confident smile, and cold gaze completed the image of a champion who knew his own power. Each punch was a performance, each provocation, an act. When the sparring session ended, he landed a combination so quick and spectacular that it drew applause from the crowd that had gathered around him. "That's how it's done, my friends," Ryan shouted, raising his gloves. "Another day, another victim." His voice echoed, heavy with arrogance. Caleb remembered the package and went to the reception desk. "Deliver it to Michael Owens," he said, showing the box. The receptionist barely looked up. "Last door on the left." As he walked through the gymnasium, the glass doors opened again. This time, Ryan Coleman returned in grand style, designer sportswear, an expensive watch, and a film crew following him. A producer with a clipboard shouted instructions. Let's film the training sequence, Ryan. Show why you're the king of the ring. The champion grinned slightly, adjusted his gloves and replied with the confidence of someone who knows his own worth. Just film me from the front. My best angle is the one of victory. Caleb, nearing the exit, paused for a moment. He watched the spectacle, cameras, lights, poses, and rehearsed lines. There's no one in my category who can touch me, Ryan said into the microphone. I face anyone. They all fall the same. That environment was the dream Caleb had always heard in his father's stories. A real gym with modern equipment, experienced coaches, and focused athletes. What he didn't expect was the sideways glance from one of Ryan's assistants, a strong man with a goatee, who stared at him and shouted, "Hey kid, lost? Cleaning is at night." Low laughs arose around them. "Maybe he's asking for an autograph," another mocked, "or alms." Caleb lowered his head and tightened his grip on his backpack straps, trying to ignore it. But fate seemed to want to test his patience. A small package slipped and fell to the ground with a dry thud. As he bent down to pick it up, he heard someone laugh. "Look at that! Even the delivery guys have good reflexes." A middle-aged man in shorts and gloves let out a mocking laugh. "Maybe we should let the kid test the punching bag. See if he can take anything." The joke drew laughter, but it also caught Ryan Coleman's attention. The champion stepped away from the cameras, his sharp gaze meeting Caleb Johnson's. "Now that would make a good shot," he said with a mischievous grin. "Hey, recording crew, we found the perfect shot for audience participation." Before Caleb could understand what was happening, Ryan was already coming toward him, closely followed by the camera crew. "Hey, delivery guy, want to get in the ring with a pro for a minute?" The murmuring subsided. The entire gym fell silent, all eyes on the boy. Caleb felt his heart pounding, his sweaty hands gripping his backpack. I'm just making deliveries," he replied softly, his voice almost fading. "Come on, it'll be fun," Ryan insisted, putting his arm around the boy's shoulder and leading him to the ring as if introducing a show. "What's your name, kid?" "Caleb," he replied hesitantly. "Caleb," Ryan repeated theatrically, turning to the cameras. "Look at this luck. A minute in the ring with the future champion. This is going to be a hit on social media." Cell phones immediately went up, ready to record the spectacle. Sweat dripped down Caleb's forehead, but it wasn't from the heat. This wasn't what he imagined for his first time in a real ring. "I don't have gloves," he tried to argue. "We have some here," Ryan replied, gesturing to an assistant who quickly appeared with a worn, tattered pair that smelled of leather and old training. Caleb froze as the man placed the gloves on his hands. Everything inside him screamed to refuse and leave. But that other voice, his father's, echoed softly in his head. "Don't back down now, son." He took a deep breath and climbed the ropes. The ring seemed bigger than he had imagined. Ryan, on the other side, bounced lightly on his toes, smiling at the cameras. "Just a minute, kid," he said in an almost friendly tone. But his gaze left no doubt. It was a trap. "Show us what you're capable of." The metallic sound of the bell echoed, and Ryan advanced with 2 quick jabs, more showy than aggressive. Instinctively, Caleb moved. He dodged naturally, his body responding on its own, as if every reflex came from the early morning spent training in alleyways. A murmur swept through the gym. Ryan frowned, his smile faltering for a moment. He tried another combination, more intense. But Caleb dodged again, light and precise. It was a raw, street style born from survival. The laughter subsided. A man in the audience murmured, "That kid knows how to handle himself." Ryan's face hardened. He threw a powerful punch, aiming for the boy's chest. But Caleb, by pure reflex, spun his body and responded with a sharp right hook to the champion's ribs. The impact echoed like thunder. It wasn't strong, but it was precise. The silence that followed felt like it weighed a ton. For a brief moment no one moved. Then Ryan's face changed. The smile vanished, replaced by pure fury. With a violent shove, he sent Caleb tumbling against the ropes. "You think this is a joke?" he roared. "Want to play with a pro? Then come tomorrow, same ring, 3 rounds." The threat sounded like a sentence. People whispered. The cameras kept rolling. Caleb, his face burning with embarrassment, took off his gloves, threw them on the tarp, and left silently. He felt the stares piercing his back. "See you tomorrow, delivery guy," Ryan shouted, laughing. "Or will you be busy carrying boxes?" Laughter followed him to the door. Outside, the afternoon sun seemed heavier. On the city bus, sitting alone in the back, Caleb relived the scene, the voices, the laughter. He hadn't ordered any of it, and now he was the butt of jokes, probably already spread across social media as the cheeky delivery guy. He opened his backpack and took out the small bag containing his father's old gloves. He ran his fingers over the marks on the worn leather, feeling the weight of the memories. "Let's show them," he murmured, clutching his gloves to his chest. "Let's show everyone." The apartment was silent when Caleb Johnson returned home. Only the weary hum of the old wall fan tried to overcome the sweltering Los Angeles heat. He dropped his backpack near the door and went straight to the refrigerator, opening a bottle of water and drinking half of it in one gulp. "You're back early," said a voice from the hallway. Natalie Johnson appeared, leaning against the door, still in her nursing school uniform, her hair pulled back in a hurried bun. At 23, she had been a sister, friend, and mother figure since their father had passed away 5 years earlier. Her attentive eyes quickly caught the tension in her brother's shoulders. "What happened?" she asked, crossing her arms. "Nothing. I just finished the deliveries early." Caleb tried to deflect, avoiding her gaze. "Caleb." Her tone carried experience and affection. "What really happened?" With a heavy sigh, he recounted the incident at the Coleman boxing arena. As the words came out, Natalie's expression hardened. "You're not planning on going back there tomorrow, are you?" she asked firmly. "That wasn't a question." "I don't know," Caleb replied, though deep down he had already decided. "Those guys downtown just want to use you for their little show," she said, her voice rising. "If you go back, you'll just become entertainment for people who never cared about you." Caleb nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. "I'm going for a walk," he murmured, picking up his cell phone. "Caleb!" Natalie called, but the door was already closing behind him. His steps led him automatically to the old Maplewood Community Boxing Association building, 6 blocks away. The facade was covered in graffiti, the windows were broken, and the gate was rusty. The gym had closed 3 years ago, but Caleb still kept a key. A gift from the former owner, a friend of his father. The interior was a portrait of longing. The smell of mildew, the floor covered in sand, torn tatami mats, and a crooked ring with only 3 ropes. But inside, time seemed to stand still. That was his father's temple, the man who had taught him his first jab when he could barely reach the punching bag. Caleb walked to the most intact corner, pulled an old roll of duct tape from his pocket, and began wrapping his hands. Each blow to the bag was a silent response to the day's humiliation. The anger dissolved with each movement. There, in the silence of the abandoned gym, he wasn't the delivery boy, nor the fatherless kid. He was just Caleb Johnson, son of a fighter, with the same fire in his blood and the same unfinished dream. Time slipped away between the blows, the dry sound of the impacts echoing off the empty walls. When he realized it, his knuckles were bleeding, and his shirt was soaked with sweat. His cell phone vibrated in his pocket, a message from Natalie. "Are you okay?" But when he unlocked the screen, he saw something else. Notifications exploded, dozens of them. Mentions, tags, videos. Hesitantly, he opened one of the networks. The video was there. The scene of him in the ring with Ryan Coleman, edited, narrated and subtitled. The main caption read, "Champion puts the delivery guy in his place. Dutcher next king of the ring." Other versions used hashtags like "The Delivery Guy Fell" and "Dutch Coleman Arena." The video went viral in a matter of hours. Comments were divided. Some mocked him, others were impressed by Caleb's reflexes and composure against the champion. One sports analyst even reposted saying, "Who is this kid? He has better instincts than many professionals." Caleb took a deep breath and closed the app. The shame that had consumed him before was beginning to change shape. It was anger, but it was also desire, a spark of something bigger. He sent a short message to his sister, "I'm going home," and started walking back. When he arrived, the small kitchen was lit only by the yellow light of the lamp. Natalie was waiting for him with dinner, but she wasn't alone. Brandon Lewis, a childhood friend, was sitting at the table as excited as a child. "Dude, you're blowing up on the internet," he exclaimed, laughing and showing his cell phone. "Look at this." He handed Caleb a crumpled flyer. The hastily printed poster bore the bold letters, "Just one night, the street kid versus the champion." Below was a photo of Ryan Coleman, arms crossed, and the caption, "Ryan Coleman faces the delivery guy in a special exhibition match." Caleb read, incredulous. "It's tomorrow," he said, pointing to the date. Brandon nodded, excited. "They're selling tickets and everything. It's like the preliminary fight to the main event. And you know what's worse? The guy's team organized everything without even asking you." Caleb stood still, the flyer trembling between his fingers. Outside, the distant noise of the city seemed to dissolve. He felt the weight of something much bigger approaching, the moment when he would cease to be just a delivery boy. Caleb Johnson's voice rose, filled with indignation. "Would you have said yes if it were you?" he snapped, his voice louder than he intended. Natalie crossed her arms firmly. "Don't try to reverse it. You know that's crazy." Caleb took a deep breath, avoiding looking at her. The truth was, however absurd it seemed, a part of him wanted it. He wanted a real chance, a real ring, even if it was against someone like Ryan Coleman. "They can't just put you in the fight," Natalie insisted. "You don't have a license. You're not trained. You're going to get hurt." "My father trained me," Caleb replied, his voice heavy with memories. "When you were 12 years old," she retorted, "and this guy is a professional. He makes a living from this, Caleb. He can destroy you in seconds." Caleb looked at the flyer on the table. His photo was taken from the viral video, his face sweaty, tense, frozen in the moment he landed the blow. Ryan, on the other hand, appeared in a perfect, confident pose, as if he had already won. "I will go," he finally said in a firm voice. Natalie threw up her hands, exasperated. "Why? To prove what? That I'm crazy enough to become a meme again?" "No," Caleb replied, almost in a whisper. "To prove something to myself." The argument would have continued if it hadn't been for the knock on the door. Caleb, confused, opened it and found a middle-aged black man standing in the hallway. Grey hair, broad shoulders, and a look that combined calmness and authority. "Are you Caleb Johnson?" he asked in a hoarse voice. "I'm Raymond Moore. I knew your father, Marcus." Caleb stood motionless. He looked back at Natalie, who was equally surprised. They rarely received visitors, even less so, someone who claimed to have known their father. "May I come in? I saw the video. We need to talk." Caleb stepped aside and let him in. His friend Brandon Lewis, sensing the atmosphere, stood up quickly. "I'm going now. Talk to you later, bro." Once they were alone, Raymond looked at the young man intently. "Now I understand. You move like him." "Did you know my father?" Caleb asked curiously. "I trained with him many years ago," Raymond replied. "After he got married, we lost touch. I worked training athletes in Nevada for 15 years. I returned to Los Angeles a month ago." "And did you see the video?" Natalie asked suspiciously. "Impossible not to see," Raymond laughed. "It's everywhere. You've got talent, kid. Natural, rare to see." Caleb shrugged, somewhat awkwardly. "I only practice shadow boxing sometimes. My dad taught me the basics. Your father had skill and intelligence, and you inherited that." Natalie cut the compliment short. "This Ryan Coleman guy has scheduled an exhibition match for tomorrow. Caleb thinks he'll go." Raymond turned slowly to the boy. "Are you really going to?" "I'll go," Caleb replied without hesitation. The veteran was silent for a moment, then nodded. "Then you'll need someone by your side." "What do you mean by that?" Caleb asked, confused. "I mean, I'm going to train you," Raymond said simply. "You can't work miracles in a day, but you can teach me how to survive." Natalie started to protest, but Caleb interrupted her. "Would you do that?" "Call that a debt," Raymond replied with a half-smile. "I owed it to your father." Before they could continue, Caleb's cell phone vibrated. A new notification, a video posted by Ryan Coleman himself. He appeared in a luxurious apartment, speaking directly to the camera. "So, folks, you must have seen the little incident today at the Coleman boxing arena," he began sarcastically. "And yes, I'm going to fight the delivery guy tomorrow night. 3 exhibition rounds. Consider it a public service, showing what happens when amateurs think they're pros." His smile was cold, calculated. "And for you, kid, if you're watching, don't worry. I'll try not to hurt you too much. After all, someone needs to keep making deliveries later." The video ended with a dry laugh. Caleb felt his face burning. Anger and shame mingled in his chest. "He thinks this is all a joke," she murmured. "Perfect," said Raymond with sudden calm. Caleb and Natalie stared at him confused. "The more he underestimates you, the better for you," he explained. "If you're serious, the training starts today. I know a place." "The old Maplewood Boxing Association," Caleb suggested. "I still have the key." Raymond's eyes lit up. "Perfect. Meet me there in an hour. Bring everything you have." When he left, Natalie turned to her brother. Her voice trembled between fear and affection. "Are you really going to do that?" "I need to, Nat," he replied softly. "I don't know how to explain it, but I need to." She sighed and pulled him into a tight hug. "Then you'd better come back in one piece, you hear?" "I promise," said Caleb, although they both knew it might be an impossible promise to keep. That night, under the flickering lights of the Maplewood Boxing Association, the air smelled of rust, dust, and effort. Raymond Moore trained Caleb Johnson with the intensity of someone who knew he had little time and much to teach. There was no state-of-the-art equipment, just makeshift sandbags and a worn rope that served as a boundary for the ring. "Ryan Coleman is going to come at you with everything he's got," Raymond warned, watching the young man's movements. "He was embarrassed by the video. He's going to want to finish you in the first round. So what do I do?" Caleb asked, panting, his body covered in sweat. "First, survive. Dodge, block, make him work for every punch. Second, stay calm. He wants to scare you. Don't give him that satisfaction." They trained until nearly midnight. Raymond corrected posture, adjusted balance, taught tricks that time cannot erase. Each correction brought back echoes of the past, memories of Caleb's father, Marcus Johnson, echoing between the punches. When they finally stopped, Caleb was exhausted, but with something new in his eyes. Focus. "Take a break," Raymond said, grabbing the towel and flipping the switch. "Tomorrow is going to be a long day." The next morning, Caleb woke up early, but sleep still weighed on his eyes. He sat at the kitchen table watching Ryan Coleman videos on his phone. The more he watched, the more doubt grew. The man was fast, technical, ruthless. In comparison, he, a delivery man, an amateur. "Are you reconsidering?" asked Natalie, appearing in the doorway. "I don't know if I can," Caleb admitted, his voice almost a whisper. "He's much better." "So why continue?" Because giving up seems worse, he replied without raising his eyes. Natalie was silent for a moment, then returned with a small box in her hands. I was saving this for your 18th birthday, but I think you need it now. Inside the box, a yellowed letter, Marcus Johnson's unmistakable handwriting. Did Dad write this? Caleb asked, his voice breaking. Yes, Natalie replied softly. He wrote letters for every important birthday. This one was for when you became a man. With trembling hands, Caleb opened the letter and began to read. Caleb, now you are a man, forging your own path. Whatever that path may be, never let anyone measure your worth. The world will try to label you, to limit what you can do, but the only limits that matter are the ones you accept. I watched you grow. I saw the flame inside you, and it doesn't come from me or anyone else. It's only yours. Trust it, follow it, and know that I'm proud of the man you're becoming. With love, his father, Marcus Johnson. Caleb read it twice, the words mingling with tears. When he looked up, Natalie was smiling tenderly. Are you going to let Ryan Coleman tell you what you can and can't do? She asked. He carefully folded the letter and placed it back in the box. No, I'm not going. While Caleb rediscovered his strength, Ryan Coleman viewed the day as just another appointment. His morning workout felt more like a photo shoot than actual training. He casually hit the punching bag while manager Chris Danner coordinated the marketing team. Let's call the event Pro vs. Joe, Chris said excitedly. You go in, have a little fun, show who's boss, and that's it. It'll generate clicks. Ryan laughed dismissively. Relax, this will be quick. His coach, Edward Harris, watched silently before intervening. Just remember one thing, this kid has nothing to lose. That makes him dangerous. But Ryan just shook his head, grinning arrogantly. He's a lucky delivery guy. Tonight, his luck runs out. As evening fell, Los Angeles was buzzing. Posters scattered throughout the city center announced the confrontation. One night only, the champion versus the delivery man. Social media was exploding. Jokes, bets, taunts. Some laughed, others cheered for revenge. Backstage at the Staples Pavilion, the atmosphere was different. Caleb sat alone, his father's old gloves in his lap. They were worn and patched, but he insisted on wearing them. He had glued the initials MJ for Marcus Johnson onto the palms. Raymond Moore entered, carrying a bottle of water and a towel. It's almost time, he said, handing over the bottle. How are you feeling? Nervous, Caleb replied, taking a deep breath, but ready. Raymond smiled, satisfied. Remember what I said. To them, you're just a joke, but today you're the one who writes the ending. Raymond pointed to the locker room door, from where the muffled sound of the crowd was coming. To them, he's a show. But to you, Caleb, he's real. He placed his hand on the young man's shoulder. Respect the man you're going to face, but don't fear him. Caleb took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Let's go. As he walked toward the ring, his father's voice echoed in his mind. Never let anyone measure your worth. That night, win or lose, Caleb Johnson would measure his own worth. And no one, not Ryan Coleman, not the audience, not the internet, could take that away from him. The Staples Pavilion was buzzing with anticipation. What had started as a simple exhibition fight had turned into a spectacle. The news had spread throughout Los Angeles, partly thanks to Ryan's marketing team, partly because of the viral video that kept circulating. The stands were nearly full, a much larger audience than any preliminary event would warrant. In the front rows, Ryan Coleman's usual audience, business people, influencers with cell phones in hand, sponsors and boxing fanatics, all treating the fight as a mere warm-up before the main attraction. But in the higher rows, in the cheaper seats, another type of audience had gathered. The news had reached South Central. Shopkeepers who knew Caleb from his deliveries, former schoolmates, families who remembered his father, pooled their resources to buy tickets. They stood there, discreet, silent but present, a way of saying, "We believe in you." In the locker room, Caleb paced back and forth, his father's old gloves already in his hands. "Remember the plan," Raymond said, adjusting the old blue sweatshirt the boy had insisted on wearing. "First round, just move. Dodge, gauge the space, don't trade blows. Got it?" Caleb nodded, his mouth too dry to answer. Outside, the sound of the crowd and the excited voice of the announcer filled the gymnasium. "Hey!" Raymond grabbed the boy's shoulders and made him look at him. "You've already won just by being here. Everything else is just details." Meanwhile, in the luxurious dressing room across the hall, Ryan Coleman was undergoing final touches before his triumphant entrance. A makeup artist was finishing his face, while Chris Danner, his manager, reviewed the schedule. "The lights will go out at the start of the music. A spotlight will follow you to the ring. Make it seem like a historic event. We're filming for episode 3, he explained excitedly. Ryan nodded, admiring his own reflection. The white silk robe bore the words, "Challenge me if you dare," in gold lettering on the back. His team laughed, turning what had once been a public embarrassment into perfect marketing. "What is the boy going to wear?" Ryan asked casually. "Probably the delivery driver's uniform," Chris replied, provoking laughter. But Edward Harris, the coach, remained silent. "Don't underestimate him," he said quietly. "That kid, the move he made in the video, that's something you can't teach." Ryan rolled his eyes. One lucky street fight versus 23 professional fights. That's not even fair. The gym lights went out. A deep beat filled the space, and the spotlight illuminated the main entrance. Ryan Coleman emerged with his arms raised, confidence etched on his face even before stepping into the ring. The crowd responded with applause and shouts, cell phones glowing like tiny stars. Once in the ring, he provoked the crowd, slapping his gloves together and jumping from corner to corner, his defined body under the spotlights. He took off his robe, revealing his logo-covered shorts and the physique of someone who made a living from boxing. Then the lights dimmed again. The music stopped. Silence. The presenter cleared his throat and announced without enthusiasm, "And now, the challenger, Caleb Johnson." No music, no effects. Caleb appeared alone, wearing his father's navy blue sweatshirt over simple black shorts. The walk was steady, each step a reminder of everything that had brought him there. As they crossed the ropes, a murmur echoed through the gymnasium. Some recognized him from the video and pointed him out. Others simply laughed at the stark contrast between the two. "Is this for real?" someone commented from the front row. "It looks like the guy just got off work." Caleb took off his sweatshirt. His lean but defined body contrasted with Ryan's strength. The old gloves, marked with his father's initials, stood out from the shiny equipment around them. From some quarters, there were chuckles, but in the upper stands, the silence was absolute, the kind of silence that precedes a miracle. The referee called the two fighters to the center of the ring. "I want a clean fight," he said, looking intently at both of them. 3 exhibition rounds, respect and professionalism. Ryan Coleman smiled ironically when he heard the word professional. "Don't worry, Judge," he replied loudly enough for the audience to hear. "I promise not to hurt the delivery man too much." Caleb Johnson remained silent, his gaze fixed over his opponent's shoulder, remembering Raymond Moore's advice. Stay calm, control the pace, never react to provocation. They touched gloves, Ryan's nonchalant touch contrasting with Caleb's respectful gesture, and returned to their corners. The gong sounded. Ryan immediately stepped forward, confident, throwing quick theatrical jabs. Each punch drew applause and cheers from the audience, who vibrated with the spectacle. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat, glancing at the cameras with a smile that exuded arrogance. "Come on, kid," he taunted between punches. "Show us that lucky little punch from the video." Caleb kept moving as Raymond had instructed him. Light feet, controlled breathing, total focus. When Ryan's punches landed, they were glancing blows. Nothing solid, nothing that really shook him. At the press conference table, the R&B commentator laughed into the microphone. "Look at that delivery guy running. Is that boxing or a marathon, people?" The comment drew laughter from the audience, and within minutes, social media began buzzing with new jokes. Hashtags like "You run delivery man," "You're a ring challenge," and "Boxing boy" went viral. But in the higher stands, the South Central crowd saw something different. They didn't see fear, they saw strategy. Among them, Natalie Johnson watched with her heart racing, her hands clenched, trembling with each blow thrown in her brother's direction. As the round progressed, Caleb remembered training with his father Marcus in the cramped living room at home. Control the storm, don't become it. Be the eye of the hurricane, calm, centered, waiting for the right moment. The bell rang, ending the first round. Ryan returned to the corner, smiling, breathless but confident. Caleb, sweaty and serene, sat on the makeshift bench while Raymond greeted him with a cloth and a bottle of water. "Good job," the coach whispered. "You made him sweat." Caleb looked up. "Did you see?" "I saw it. He thought he could take you down in 30 seconds. Now he's lost. You broke his rhythm. That makes him dangerous but also vulnerable." On the other side, Ryan's coach, Edward Harris, spoke urgently. "Stop messing around, Ryan. He's making you look like an amateur. Just finish this already." Ryan simply smiled, tossing the towel aside. "Relax, Professor. I'm just putting on a show." The second round began, and this time, Ryan Coleman put the spectacle aside. He came in focused, eyes fixed, heavier punches, calculated steps. He cornered Caleb, trying to trap him against the ropes. The crowd roared, but Caleb stuck to his strategy. He began to observe the pattern of the jabs, the movement of the shoulder, the pivot of the left foot before the cross. It was like watching his father's old tapes, only now inside the storm. Midway through the round, Ryan threw the same combination that Caleb had studied in videos: jab, cross, hook. But this time, the boy ducked, dodged, and counterattacked with two precise jabs to the champion's face. The impact resonated. Ryan stumbled half a step back, surprised. A murmur swept through the gymnasium, the kind of sound that precedes something historic. His expression changed. The showman vanished. All that remained was the competitor, wounded in his pride. Enraged, he lunged forward, throwing a powerful punch that grazed Caleb's face. "Run, delivery guy!" Ryan shouted, breathless. But his tone was no longer one of disdain, it was one of frustration. The atmosphere in the gymnasium changed. The audience, who had previously laughed, now watched in attentive silence. Even Ryan's fans seemed gripped by the growing tension. Caleb stayed focused, capitalizing on every mistake his opponent made. When he landed another clean counterattack, Ryan responded with a disguised elbow strike during the clinch, hitting his ribs. "Watch out for the elbow strike!" warned the judge, separating the two. But Ryan took advantage of the moment to push Caleb's head down. Another warning. "He's fighting dirty!" someone shouted from the stands. And for the first time that night, the audience began to switch sides. The gong ended the second round, and the sound echoed like a collective breath within the Staples Pavilion. Caleb Johnson sat in his corner, his chest heaving, and noticed the change in the air. The laughter had ceased. The boos had vanished. Now, the audience leaned forward, their cell phones still filming, but with a different purpose. No one laughed anymore. They were witnessing something no one expected. Raymond Moore carefully cleaned a small cut above the boy's eye, the result of an accidental headbutt. "He's getting frustrated," he murmured firmly, "and a frustrated fighter misses." "What do I do?" Caleb asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Raymond's eyes gleamed with a mixture of pride and emotion. "You've won over the crowd, kid. Now win the fight." On the other side, Ryan Coleman was receiving a harsh reprimand. "Get a grip," hissed Edward Harris, his trainer. "You're exposing yourself. He's an amateur, for God's sake." Ryan shrugged, trying to shake off the tension. "I can do this. In the last round, I'll finish this." But his voice no longer carried the same confidence as before. The bell rang, announcing the third round. Ryan charged forward aggressively, looking to finish the fight once and for all. But something was different. His punches were wider, his technique dirtier, his body tense, his breathing shallow. Caleb, on the other hand, moved with lightness, with awareness. He had found his rhythm. He was no longer the boy trying to survive. He was the fighter who saw the pattern, the timing, and the opening. The audience noticed. Even the R&B reporter who had previously mocked him changed his tone. "The delivery guy is showing off his technique. This kid has real talent," he said, sounding surprised. The words reached Ryan's ears and he roared in frustration. With an uncontrolled blow, he threw a right cross, but missed. The air went silent. Caleb instinctively turned his body to the right, crouched down, and, in a movement that seemed choreographed by life itself, delivered a clean and precise uppercut to the champion's chin. The impact echoed throughout the entire gymnasium. Ryan's eyes widened. His legs gave way. For a moment, time stood still. Then, as if in slow motion, the undefeated, the king of the ring, fell backward. 1, 2 steps, and he fell with the weight of a tree being felled. The judge rushed over, placing himself between the two. "Neutral corner," he ordered. Caleb stepped back, still not understanding what had just happened. The gymnasium fell silent, the kind of silence that precedes chaos. 1, the countdown has begun. 2, 3. Half the arena erupted in cries of denial. The other half, especially in the upper rows, began to rise. 4, 5. Ryan's section booed and cursed, while the South Central audience began to chant in unison, "Go for it, kid! Go for it, kid!" 7, 8. Ryan leaned on the ropes, staggering, trying to clear his mind. "New!" The judge watched him closely, his eyes fixed on his hesitant movements. 10. The hand gesture followed immediately afterward. "The fight is over. Technical knockout." The gym exploded. Ryan's team protested, yelling at the referee. But the noise from the crowd drowned it all out. People were crying, hugging, filming. On the big screens, the replay of the uppercut ran in slow motion, repeated from various angles, while social media exploded. The old Desafio Dorang hashtag has now given way to new tags. Entregador Dorang, Caleb Johnson, Nokoti Duano. Ryan Coleman was still dazed. He tried to get up, pushing the assistants away. "It was luck," he shouted, spitting the words out angrily. "A stroke of luck, that's all." But no one else seemed to be listening. Without offering the traditional handshake, he left the ring with his head down, surrounded by cameras and flashes. In the center of the ring, Caleb was still breathing rapidly in disbelief. Raymond climbed the ropes, hugged him tightly, and whispered something in his ear, words that only the sound of victory could understand. Caleb Johnson, the delivery man from South Central, had just knocked down a champion, and for the first time in a long time, a simple boy had made the whole country stop to see what happens when someone decides not to accept the role that the world tries to impose on them. "I think we've just witnessed the beginning of something extraordinary," declared the R&B reporter, now with a reverent tone, where before there had only been sarcasm. "Caleb Johnson, nobody expected this result. What do you have to say?" The microphone was pushed forward, and Caleb was briefly speechless. The lights, the noise, the crowd shouting his name, everything seemed distant, muffled. He glanced to the corner where Raymond nodded firmly, encouraging him with his gaze. she began, her voice choked with emotion. She cleared her throat and started again. It was never about proving them wrong. It was about proving that I belong here. The simple phrase pierced the gymnasium like a real punch. Applause erupted, and part of the audience stood up. As Caleb was being led out of the ring, people reached out, trying to touch him, to congratulate him. In just 3 rounds, the boy who had been the butt of jokes had become a symbol, an unlikely hero. Behind the scenes, the contrast couldn't be greater. In a spacious room, Ryan Coleman stood alone, head down, his face still marked by the blow. He had sent everyone away. He stared at his reflection in the mirror. The image of the undefeated champion shattered. His cell phone vibrated incessantly. Notifications, criticism, memes, excerpts of the uppercut were already circulating in edited form, with mocking captions. Former supporters now doubted his talent. It was luck, he repeated to the mirror, but even he didn't believe it. The words sounded hollow, almost ridiculous. Meanwhile, in a narrow little room at the end of the hallway, Caleb was surrounded by a small, euphoric group. Natalie hugged him with tears in her eyes. "Never scare me like that again," she said, between laughs and sobs. "No promises," Caleb replied, exhausted but smiling. Outside, journalists and cameras crowded around, trying to break through the makeshift barrier erected by Raymond Moore. "Tomorrow," he said firmly. "Today, the boy needs to rest." A persistent reporter managed to get close. "Caleb, they're already talking about sponsorships, events, even professional contracts. What's next for you?" Caleb thought for a moment, took a deep breath and replied, "The school." The reporter blinked, confused. "I'll finish high school in 5 months. This struggle wasn't the end of the line. It was just the ringing of the bell." Silence, then flashes. "But what about the opportunities?" the journalist insisted. Caleb looked up relieved. "They'll stay there. My father always said, education first, boxing later." Hours later, Raymond's old car cruised through the streets of South Central. The sidewalks were buzzing. People pointed, waved, filmed. The whole neighborhood knew. "Your life is going to change, kid," the coach said in a deep voice. Caleb looked out the window, seeing familiar faces smiling. "Is this good or bad?" "It depends on what you do with it," Raymond replied. "Fame is like fire. It can warm you or burn you. The choice is yours." When they arrived, they found the building filled with neighbors and friends. An improvised television displayed a slow-motion replay of the knockout. Each time the blow was shown, the room erupted in applause and shouts. Natalie's colleagues from East Side Municipal Hospital had brought cake and soda. Others clapped and filmed the neighborhood's new idol. Natalie pulled him aside, visibly moved. "They broadcast the fight from the hospital, Caleb. Between patients, everyone was watching. I've never been so terrified, nor so proud." On the other side of town, in a Beverly Hills penthouse, Ryan Coleman was experiencing his own night of defeat. Social media was flooded with jokes and criticism. The hashtag #TrueHumility was trending among the most discussed topics. The sponsors called incessantly, demanding explanations and threatening to break contracts. "We need to act fast," insisted Chris Danner, the manager. "Issue a statement, maybe challenge the kid to a rematch." Ryan spun slowly in his chair, incredulous. "A rematch? Are you crazy? That will only make him more famous." "He's already famous, Ryan." Chris's tone was sharp, "and worse, legitimate. The images don't lie. He beat you cleanly. Now it's about how we're going to survive this." Ryan looked away. His image as an unbeatable champion crumbled on national television, destroyed by a 17-year-old boy and a perfect strike. "Get out of here, all of you." Alone, he stared at his own reflection. He made excuses. He tried to convince himself that it was just luck, but the truth, silent and brutal, returned the gaze. He hadn't just lost one fight. The myth had been lost. But all the mental replays ended the same way. Caleb Johnson on his knees in the ring, not just exhausted, but consumed by the strength of someone fighting for something greater. The following morning, the sun had barely touched the windows of South Central when Caleb woke up. His cell phone vibrated incessantly, crashing with the absurd number of notifications, followers multiplying, messages from strangers, press invitations, sponsorship promises. The anonymous delivery man had become the talk of the nation. Among the dozens of notifications, one message made her heart stop for a second. The Olympic qualifiers want to talk. Are you ready for a real challenge? Raymond Moore. Caleb stared at the screen for long seconds, trying to understand what those words meant. Days before, he had delivered packages under the scorching sun. Now the whole world seemed to open its doors before him. He stood up slowly, observing his own reflection in the cracked mirror of the room. His face was the same, a bruise on his cheek, a small cut above his eye, but there was something new in his gaze, a quiet confidence, a certainty. The phone vibrated again, this time from an unknown number. The world has just seen what I've always known. I'm proud of you, kid. Raymond Caleb smiled, putting the device away. He picked up his father's old gloves, the worn leather, the initials MJ, hand-stamped on them, and pressed them against his chest. Thanks, Dad, he murmured. When he left the building, he was surprised by a group of neighborhood children waiting for him on the sidewalk. You took down the champion, Uncle. Will you teach us how to fight too? Asked a boy with a gleam in his eyes. Caleb looked at them, faces filled with wonder, hope, and curiosity. He smiled. Maybe someday. But first, I still need to learn properly. The sun rose behind the buildings of Los Angeles, casting long shadows across the worn asphalt. Caleb Johnson, the delivery man from South Central, walked with his head held high. He hadn't just delivered one knockout. It had given us a fresh start. The alarm clock rang an hour later, unnecessarily. Caleb was already awake, staring at the ceiling. For a second, he thought the previous night had been a dream. But the pain in his ribs and the throbbing above his eye proved otherwise. He picked up his cell phone. Hundreds of messages, hundreds of new mentions, the hashtags @Caleb Johnson, @Boxing Delivery Man, and Boxing Promise dominated social media. What is this, my God? She murmured, rubbing her eyes. A soft knock echoed on the door. Natalie, already dressed in the blue uniform of East Side Municipal Hospital. You're awake. Great. I think you should see this. She handed over the tablet. On the screen, a headline from the National Boxing Network: Los Angeles delivery driver knocks out undefeated champion. American boxing has a new name. Below, a photo captured the exact moment of the decisive uppercut. The article called him a raw talent with the soul of a champion, citing former fighters and even the United States Olympic Boxing Committee mentioning interest. And there's more, said Natalie, scrolling through the screen. The next king to be dethroned, the fall of Ryan Coleman. Caleb handed the tablet back, visibly uncomfortable. It was just a struggle, he said quietly. Not like the rest of the world, she replied, sitting down next to her brother. Your phone wouldn't stop ringing. I had to put it on silent so you could sleep. Who called? Everyone. Sports channels, business people, sponsors, even your school principal. They said you're excused today, and that they're very proud of you. Caleb smiled, unsure of what to feel. Strange, he murmured. Yesterday nobody knew who I was. Today... Before it finished, the tablet vibrated again. Natalie looked and laughed, shocked. Now you're blowing up even on video platforms. The replay of the knockout has surpassed 10 million views. Caleb stood up, letting out a slight groan of muscle pain. I think I'll call Raymond. I already spoke to him, Natalie replied. He said he'll be here in an hour. He wants to talk about the next steps. She grabbed her bag and headed for the door. I'm going to the hospital. Mrs. Thompson from next door is bringing coffee. She's become your #1 fan. Silence filled the small apartment after she left. When Caleb went into the room, he noticed something new. The walls were covered in clippings, printouts of news articles, headlines and posts. An improvised mural held together with tape and pride. In the center, in large letters, he came from deliveries, and he delivered the fight of the century. Caleb smiled, placing his hands on one of the photos, the one of the exact moment his fist struck the champion's chin. It was the same gesture as his father, repeated a generation later, and for the first time he truly believed that the best was yet to come. Mrs. Thompson arrived early, bringing enough food to feed half the block, empanadas, muffins, and a still warm cake. She spoke excitedly, recounting how she had told everyone at the South Central Baptist Church that she had known Caleb Johnson since he was a child. Before she left, 3 more neighbors showed up, asking for photos and offering congratulations. When Raymond Moore arrived, he found the boy surrounded by neighbors and curious onlookers. One look was all it took to understand. "Let's go for a walk, kid," he said calmly. "You need to breathe." They drove to a small park in Baldwin Hills, one of the few quiet corners of Los Angeles. They walked along a shaded path where the distant sound of cars mingled with birdsong. Raymond walked slowly, his hands in his pockets, until he handed Caleb a folded envelope. What happened yesterday wasn't just a victory, it was a turning point. Caleb carefully opened the envelope. Inside, a formal invitation, United States Amateur National Boxing League, USABA, selection of new talent, direct access to the U.S. Olympic Committee tryouts. Caleb looked up, surprised. "Is this real?" he asked, incredulous. "Real and urgent. They watched the whole fight yesterday. One of the coaches is an old friend of mine. They want to see you." Raymond took a deep breath. "But before you decide anything, there's something you need to understand. Fame is a double-edged sword. As long as you say yes, everyone loves you. The day you say no, you'll see who's really with you." As if fate wanted to prove his words right, Caleb's cell phone vibrated. It was a news notification. Ryan Coleman accuses delivery driver of using illegal substances. Nobody is that lucky. Caleb's jaw clenched. Is he saying, "I used steroids"? Raymond nodded, serious. It's only the beginning. He's lost everything at once. The fight, the contracts, his pride. Now he needs a villain to salvage his image. They walked in silence for a few minutes, the sound of leaves rustling under their feet, breaking the tension. When they got back to the car, Caleb had already made up his mind. "I want to do this right. Get into the league, train properly, finish my studies, no shortcuts." Raymond's smile was discreet but sincere. "Your father would be proud." Back in South Central, a group of reporters waited in front of the building. The news had spread. The delivery boy lives here. As soon as the car parked, microphones and cameras turned to it. "Caleb, what's it like to become an overnight sensation? Did you expect to beat Ryan Coleman? Is it true that the U.S. Olympic Committee has been in contact?" Raymond positioned himself between them, clearing a path. "No comment for today, folks. The kid needs to rest." But a more persistent reporter managed to get closer. "Caleb, what is your response to the accusations that you used illegal substances?" The young man stopped. He turned around. The crowd fell silent. "I've never had anything stronger than the protein shakes my sister makes." The answer was simple but firm. The rest is in the images. Anyone who wants to know the truth should watch the fight. The silence that followed lasted only a few seconds before the flashes started again. Raymond pulled him inside and closed the door, leaving the noise outside. In the following days, the media storm only grew. Television news programs displayed headlines such as "From Delivery Boy to Olympic Prospect" and "The Boy Who Silenced the Ring." Sports Nation dedicated an entire segment to his story, while social media was divided between celebrating the achievement and questioning his luck. Some hailed Caleb Johnson as the new face of American boxing. Others, fans of Ryan Coleman, called him a lucky strike. But the problem came from somewhere else. A sensationalist news report showed images of South Central, filming graffiti-covered walls, cracked sidewalks, and old buildings. "The boy who rose from poverty to glory," the narration said. Caleb watched the news report next to Natalie and shook his head in frustration. "They're portraying me as if I were homeless." "They need a script, Caleb," his sister replied wearily. "Today, it's the story of the poor boy who triumphed. Next week, it will be the story of the arrogant boy who forgot where he came from. Things change quickly." Her prediction soon came true. Days later, at Mr. Wilson's grocery store, Caleb overheard two men talking. "The kid thinks he's a star now." It was lucky. It'll be back to normal soon. Caleb walked past them silently, his gaze fixed. He knew that the world was fickle, that the same audience that applauded could also turn its back on him. But there, under the hot California sun, he noticed something different. I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone anymore. Now, he just wanted to prove to himself that yesterday's knockout was only the first of many. Caleb left the grocery store without buying anything. The words he had heard echoed like punches. The kid thinks he's a star now. Luck doesn't last forever. He tried not to show it, but it hurt. The same neighborhood that had applauded him now watched him in silence, waiting to see if success would change him. Opportunities, however, kept knocking at the door, literally. On a sweltering Thursday night, Victor Navarro, a sports promoter in an expensive suit and a practiced smile, showed up unexpectedly at the Johnsons' small apartment. He walked past Natalie, exuding charm, and got straight to the point. "Caleb, this is your winning ticket." He placed a contract on the table. The paper seemed to gleam in the yellowish light of the kitchen. "Forget the amateur circuit. I can turn you into a pro right now. 3 fights, 6 months, guaranteed purses. Real money, kid." The prices were mind-boggling. It was more money than Caleb ever imagined seeing in his entire life. Enough to buy his sister a new apartment, pay for her college without debt, maybe even reopen his father's old gym. But Natalie crossed her arms, suspicious. "What's the catch, Vic?" Victor's smile remained, but his eyes had lost their sparkle. "No tricks. Standard management. My team takes care of everything. Training, contracts, image. Even your current coach." The name Raymond Moore hung in the air. "Raymond is great for the basics, but he's old school. I train champions." The voice came out soft, but there was poison in it. When Victor left, the silence weighed heavily. Caleb twirled the contract in his hands, torn between chance and loyalty. Money would solve everything, she thought, but it would mean abandoning the only man who believed in me when no one else did. "What would Dad say?" he asked, almost in a whisper. Natalie sat down next to him, her hand on his shoulder. "Dad would say to follow your heart, but use your head. Big decisions require calm." That night, sleep wouldn't come. In the shadows of the room, Caleb weighed the pros and cons until dawn. The next morning, he went straight to the old community gym in Maplewood, where he found Natalie having a tense conversation with Raymond. "What's going on?" he asked. "I only asked why Raymond showed up right when you needed a coach," Natalie replied. Raymond took a deep breath, leaning against the ropes of the ring. "She's right. You deserve to know everything." And he told his story. In the past, he had not only been a training partner of Caleb's father, Marcus Johnson, he had been his coach. His father was a real prospect. Before a crucial fight, they wanted him to sell the result. I argued with the promoters and left. He fought anyway and lost. He never recovered. Silence fell over the gymnasium. When I saw you in that viral video fighting like him, I understood that it was my chance to settle accounts with the past. The words hung in the air, heavy, but before Caleb could reply, his cell phone vibrated with a message from Brandon. "Dude, get on social media now. Ryan posted a video about you." With a tightness in his chest, he opened the link. The video showed someone who looked like him receiving an injection in the arm. The footage was grainy, but convincing enough to fool many. The caption, "Proof that the prodigy deliveryman didn't win alone." "Is he really doing this?" he murmured, incredulous. Within hours, the fake video spread across X, TikTok, and ESPN. Ryan Coleman's fans were calling for an immediate investigation. Even with some of the audience defending Caleb, the damage had already been done. That evening, an official notification arrived in my email. Summons from the California Amateur Boxing Commission, CBAC. Hearing regarding allegations of substance abuse. They need to investigate. It's protocol, Raymond explained over the phone. We're going to clear his name. But the weight of the words seemed to crush the boy. 24 hours earlier, Caleb Johnson was about to decide whether he would go professional. Now she needed to fight for something far more essential, her integrity. Later, Natalie found him sitting on the fire escape, gazing at the lights of Los Angeles. The wind whipped at his worn sweatshirt, and his hands trembled, not from fear, but from suppressed anger. "They're not going to take this away from me, Nat," he said, without turning his face away. And for the first time, she saw the same look her father had before stepping into the ring. Not the look of someone who wants to win, but of those who refuse to be overthrown. "Are you okay?" Natalie asked, joining him on the fire escape. "I don't know," Caleb replied, gazing at the reddish horizon above Los Angeles. "Everything is happening too fast. It feels like I'm trapped in a flood." She put her arm firmly around his shoulders. "So we'll build the boat together." The hearing before the California Amateur Boxing Commission took place in a cold room in downtown Los Angeles. Caleb, accompanied by Raymond Moore and Natalie, seemed like an intruder among the executives in suits and ties. The doping test had already cleared him, but the forged video still hung over his reputation. For nearly 2 hours, he answered questions and listened to veiled accusations. When the chairman of the committee finally spoke, there was absolute silence. "We found no evidence of any wrongdoing. Mr. Johnson is cleared to participate in the amateur league program." Caleb took a deep breath, relief washing over him. But the commissioner added in a paternal tone, "Some advice, kid. The higher you climb, the harder they'll try to knock you down. Now you're not just fighting your opponent, you're fighting the system." The following morning, Caleb Johnson made a decision that surprised everyone. He deleted his social media accounts. "Have you gone mad?" Brandon asked in disbelief. "You had over 100,000 followers." "Exactly, and none of them are helping me become a better boxer." Without the digital noise, Caleb and Raymond returned to the old Maplewood Boxing Club warehouse. Dust, rust, and memories, but there, where it had all begun, a new phase was born. "Enough of proving your worth online. Only in the ring. That's where things really change," Raymond replied, adjusting his bandages. Training resumed with brutal intensity. Raymond was pushing him harder than ever. No concessions, no easy praise. The Pan American qualifiers are in 4 months. Before that, there are the regional ones. You'll be facing kids who have been fighting since they learned to walk. "Do you think I'm ready for this?" "Not yet, but it will be." The training went beyond the physical aspect. Caleb learned to think inside the ring, to read patterns, predict movements, master timing. "Boxing is a game of chess at high speed," Raymond said. "Your body only executes what your mind has already decided." While Caleb was rebuilding himself, Ryan Coleman was falling apart. After the fake video scandal, he lost sponsorships, respect, and the trust that had made him feared. He started accepting smaller fights against newcomers, and lost the first two. Arrogance gave way to frustration. His social media accounts have become a wall of excuses and passive-aggressive messages. Each post seemed like an attempt to erase Caleb Johnson's name from his own shadow. After his third consecutive defeat, Ryan's team dropped him. His manager tried to reschedule him for smaller events, but everyone knew the undefeated champion was now just a reminder that glory is fleeting. Meanwhile, Caleb was taking his first steps in the United States National Amateur Boxing League, USABA. In a local tournament, he won his debut by unanimous decision. Clean technique, mature posture, total control. The scouts started whispering his name backstage. "People are talking about you," Raymond said after the fight. "But they're also talking about another boy." The name emerged as a challenge. Diego Ramirez, a 19-year-old Texan prodigy, is the undefeated champion of the amateur circuit. 37 wins, 25 knockouts. Diego didn't need a platform or viral videos. His confidence came from victories, not from likes. In an interview with Sports Nation, he was blunt. "A viral moment doesn't make a champion. I want to see him in the ring with me." The provocation was like fuel to the fire. Caleb turned off the TV, looked at Raymond and simply said, "So that's it. Now the real game begins." And for the first time, the delivery boy seemed ready not only to fight, but to make history. The disdain turned into provocation when Diego Ramirez posted a video on social media. He was shadowing the boxer while a friend, in the background, pretended to deliver packages with a cardboard box. "The Californian delivery guy thinks he can dance with a real boxer." The caption revealed the final blow. "I'm going to send him back to his delivery route." The video went viral in minutes. The National Boxing Network, RNB, and American Pugilist magazine fueled the rivalry with inflammatory headlines: "The Coach versus Instinct," "The Texan Prodigy versus the South Central Phenomenon." If both continued winning, their fate would be inevitable, a duel at the Staples Pavilion for the Olympic spot. "Don't let it affect you, kid," Raymond Moore warned when Caleb saw the video. "He's trying to destabilize you. Fighters who fight when they're angry lose focus." Caleb nodded, but inside him the provocation had become fuel. He started arriving at the academy before sunrise and only left when Raymond forcibly sent him away. The Maplewood Boxing Club, which months before had barely been afloat, became a symbol of rebirth. Local companies donated equipment. Children from the neighborhood sat on the ground, silently watching each practice session, as if they were witnessing a miracle in the making. Natalie organized a community effort to repair the roof and install new lights. A sign hanging on the wall read, "He fights for all of us." Even Sam from the barbershop, who always had an opinion, showed up with a donation envelope. "The last thing this boy needs is to train in a place falling apart." The story quickly caught the attention of American Pugilist, which published an article titled, "The Boy Who Delivers Hope." No sensationalism, no poor kid who triumphed drama. The report showed Caleb as he truly was, disciplined, determined, and deeply connected to the roots of his community. While Caleb Johnson was rising, Ryan Coleman continued to sink. At a regional tournament where Caleb was competing and Ryan was making a brief appearance, fate brought the two face-to-face in an empty hallway. Ryan was unrecognizable, simple clothes, tired eyes, a hoarse voice, perhaps from drinking, perhaps from regret. "Johnson," he greeted bitterly. "Coleman." Silence. Then Ryan said, "You took everything from me." Caleb took a deep breath. No, you gave everything away for free. The truth hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Ryan tried to answer but only looked away and walked away, his shoulders hunched. The encounter deeply affected Caleb. The former champion's downfall was a reminder of the danger of building a career on vanity instead of purpose. He reinforced the silent vow he had made to himself, never to forget where he came from, nor why he started. The following weeks passed at a frantic pace. Each victory brought him closer to the inevitable confrontation. And when the American Olympic Committee confirmed the schedule, the entire country came to a standstill. Caleb Johnson versus Diego Ramirez, National Qualifier Final. Live broadcast, packed arena, pride at stake. On the eve of the announcement, Raymond Moore showed up at the Johnsons' apartment. They climbed together to the fire escape, the same place where so many decisions had been made. Down below, the lights of Los Angeles twinkled like an ocean of possibilities. "Tomorrow is official," Raymond said. "You against Diego. National broadcast. The Staples Pavilion will be shaking." Caleb nodded. "Any final advice, Master?" Raymond was silent for a moment. "When I coached your father, I always told him, just focus on winning. But with you, the advice is different." "Which?" "Don't just win. Change what they think is possible." Later, alone, Caleb opened the closet and found a small wooden box. Inside, an old cassette tape recorder, the same one that had belonged to Marcus Johnson. With trembling hands, she pressed the play button. After a hissing sound, his father's voice filled the room. "If you're listening to this, son, it's because you haven't given up, and that makes me proud. No matter what happens, the men in our family don't back down." The words echoed in the silence of the early morning, and for the first time, Caleb Johnson felt no fear of what was to come. He felt destined. We may fall, but we always get back up, always. "Believe in yourself, son, more than you imagine." Marcus Johnson's words, recorded so many years ago, sounded as if his father was still there. Caleb remained motionless, tears streaming down his face as the tape stopped with a sharp click. After everything, the falls, the struggles, the doubts, it seemed that his father had finally given him the strength he needed. That night, Caleb Johnson didn't sleep. Sitting on the bed, with his father's gloves in his hands, he understood that the fight against Diego Ramirez wasn't just about medals or headlines. It was about honor, memory, and belonging. The delivery boy was about to deliver again. This time, the story of his life. The Staples Pavilion was shaking even before the first gong. The stands were packed, from the VIP seats, occupied by former champions and commentators, to the upper rows, where South Central fans waved signs with hand-painted slogans, "Our champion delivers dreams." The National Boxing Network was broadcasting live. Analysts are endlessly debating Diego's surgical technique versus Caleb's disciplined instinct. The odds favored Diego Ramirez, but each recent victory by Caleb narrowed the gap. Behind the scenes, the atmosphere was different. Caleb was sitting in the locker room, Marcus's old gloves resting on his knees. Unlike his first fight with Ryan Coleman, now he knew exactly what he was about to face, and what it represented. Glory was secondary. The mission was personal. Raymond Moore entered, carrying duct tape and a bottle of water. "It's almost time, kid. Ready?" More than ever. Months of training had transformed him. He was no longer just a talented delivery driver. He was a complete athlete, forged in discipline and driven by purpose. "Remember the plan," Raymond warned, as he carefully bandaged his hands. "Diego comes out strong in the first round. He always does. But the first round isn't fighting, it's reading. Let him show who he really is, and use that against him." Caleb nodded silently. They had studied Diego in every detail. Every movement, every pattern, every postural vice. The Texan was fast, methodical, and used to dominating through pressure, but as Raymond always reminded us, he never confronted anyone who wasn't afraid of him. And fear is what makes most people lose before the first punch is thrown. On the other side of the arena, Diego Ramirez was preparing with the precision of a Swiss watch. His father, a naturalized Cuban ex-boxer, watched closely, repeating in Spanish in a firm voice, "He's just a story, son. A story that inspires others. You are reality." Diego didn't underestimate Caleb, but he didn't fear him either. "I knew I would be facing someone talented, perhaps even brilliant, but without the technical background of someone who has lived on the circuit since childhood." For him, victory was simply the natural course of things. When the lights went out and the announcer declared the start of the evening, the tension was palpable. Diego entered first. White uniform, confident steps, cold gaze. No spectacle, just focus. His team followed him, wearing identical jackets and with serious faces. Then came Caleb Johnson. His father's navy blue sweatshirt draped over his shoulder, head held high, breathing measured. Raymond walked alongside, holding a towel with the new Maplewood Boxing Club logo, sewn on by neighborhood residents. In the stands, Natalie tried to hold back tears. Surrounded by her hospital colleagues and the children of South Central, she watched her brother march not just for a fight, but for a symbol. The announcer declared, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the final of the American Olympic Trials, middleweight category. 5 rounds to decide who will represent the United States at the Pan American Games and the Paris Olympics." The two fighters met in the center of the ring. Diego stared at Caleb, searching for fear. He found serenity. The gong sounded. Diego Ramirez started with his trademark initial fury, delivering precise jabs as fast as lightning. But Caleb Johnson was no longer the makeshift kid from the first fight. Her footwork flowed like a calculated dance. 2 blows struck his guard, but neither shook him. From the corner, Raymond shouted, "Breathe, read him. He still thinks you're the delivery guy." And it was there, amidst the noise of the crowd and the echo of the jabs, that Caleb Johnson realized what he was about to deliver that night. It wasn't just a fight. It was her father's inheritance, her sister's faith, and the pride of an entire city. R&B commentators noticed immediately. Diego Ramirez started, as always, aggressive, dominating the center of the ring. But Caleb Johnson wasn't the type of opponent to stand still. He moved lightly, with precise steps, without offering a fixed target. Diego pressed, cornered, and unleashed quick combinations that would have destroyed ordinary opponents. But Caleb blocked, dodged, and above all, observed. Every feint, every shoulder movement, every breath Diego took became a clue. He noticed the slight lowering of the guard before the right cross, the subtle pause between the feints. The first round ended with Diego Ramirez in the lead, but his expression upon returning to the corner revealed something unusual. He hadn't completely mastered it. "He seems slow, Dad," she said in Spanish, breathless. "Be careful. He's studying you," the father replied firmly. The commentators confirmed. Caleb Johnson spent the entire round analyzing. Classic strategy: let the opponent show everything before counterattacking. The second round began with a subtle change. Instead of simply defending himself, Caleb began to respond. When Diego threw a 3-punch sequence, Caleb ducked on the third and landed a precise hook to the body. The shot made Diego's eyes widen. He hadn't expected such precision from a rookie. The pressure increased, pushing Caleb against the ropes. But he had already foreseen this. Turning his body, he escaped the corner and landed a clean jab on his opponent's face. The arena erupted in unison. "This isn't the same kid from the fight against Ryan Coleman," one commentator remarked. "This is an athlete who learned to think inside the ring." The second round ended more evenly. Diego was still scoring points, but the rhythm was starting to change. In the corner, the differences were striking. On one side, coaches are talking about tactical adjustments. On the other side, Raymond Moore stares at Caleb and says only, "Do you see now?" His hand falls before the hook. The third round started tensely. Diego Ramirez, realizing the danger, returned more aggressively. His right hook exploded in Caleb's temple, causing him to stagger for a moment. The crowd held its breath. Diego seized the moment and unleashed a flurry of blows, attempting to end the round with a knockout, but Caleb endured. With each blow, he remembered his father's voice echoing in his head. "Control the storm, don't become part of it." Absorbing the impact, dodging by millimeters, he waited for the mistake, and it came. The moment Diego hesitated, Caleb countered with a perfectly timed uppercut. The sound of the impact echoed like thunder. Diego took a step back, surprised. The crowd erupted. In the stands, the South Central fans began chanting Caleb's name. The sound spread, reaching even the VIP seats. Diego, annoyed, changed tactics. He started provoking. During the clinches, he whispered insults. After exchanging blows, he smiled disdainfully. But Caleb didn't take the bait. I remembered Ryan Coleman. I remembered how blind rage destroys focus. He remained cold, calculating, ruthless. In the corner, Raymond merely murmured, "He wants to get inside your head, but you're already living in his place." The fourth round elevated the fight to an almost mythical level. Both marked, both bleeding. Sweat glistened under the lights of the Staples Pavilion. Diego's jabs were blades, Caleb's counterattacks, surgical precision. Nobody would give in. Midway through the round came the move everyone was waiting for. Diego Ramirez's deadly combination, jab, feint, right cross, the same one that had already ended dozens of fights. The punch hit Caleb in the chin, causing him to stagger. The crowd fell silent. Diego saw the opportunity, launched another cross to finish it all. But Caleb Johnson was no longer the boy who reacted on instinct. Now he anticipated. He dodged the blow by centimeters. The punch grazed his ear, completely throwing Diego off balance. In a pure reflex, Caleb responded with a short left hook. It didn't seem powerful, but it landed squarely on Diego's chin. The champion's legs wobbled. For an eternity, Diego Ramirez, the undefeated, the prodigy, stumbled before a boy who carried the weight of an entire city on his gloves. And in that instant, the Staples Pavilion was transformed into a temple, a place where the impossible began to seem inevitable. The arena exploded. The blow had shaken the favorite. But Caleb Johnson didn't rush things. He stayed focused, took a breath, and maintained controlled pressure, landing 2 clean punches before the bell rang, ending the fourth round. As the final round approached, the energy in the gym was electric, almost palpable. What should have been a display of technical mastery by Diego Ramirez had turned into a war. The scores were close. Anyone could have won. In the corner, Raymond kept his voice steady. "This round is yours, not his. Make it count, Caleb." On the other side, Diego's team was trying to hide their desperation. They knew the Texan prodigy was in danger. In the stands, Natalie held hands with 2 colleagues from the hospital. Her clinical eye captured what the public didn't see, the micro-expressions of pain, the physical cost of the struggle. But the heart spoke louder. "You are everything your dad believed you would be," she screamed, even without knowing if her brother would hear her. And Caleb heard it. Perhaps not the exact words, but their meaning struck him. He stood up for the final round as if he were carrying the weight and the pride of everyone around him. The fifth and final round began like wildfire. Caleb Johnson and Diego Ramirez advanced together, exchanging blows with brutal intensity. It was pure resistance. No one wanted to back down. No one wanted to give in. Time seemed to be distorted. Each second felt like an eternity. The audience was on their feet, shouting, crying, filming. Two warriors transformed the ring into a real battleground. Caleb's right eye was swelling rapidly. The cut on Diego's left eyebrow was bleeding profusely, but neither of them showed fear. And then the moment arrived. With 1 minute left, Diego landed a devastating uppercut. Caleb's mouthguard flew out. The blow would have finished off anyone else, but he remained standing, staggering, his eyes fixed on the arena lights. The referee stopped play, gave him back the earplug, and gave him a few seconds to breathe. In that suspended moment, Caleb saw everything clearly. Raymond tense in the corner, Natalie with her hands over her mouth, and the weight of Marcus Johnson's gloves, his father's legacy, in his own hands. "Can I continue?" the referee asked. Caleb nodded. The vision returned. The focus was restored. And in the last 40 seconds, he found something new. A rhythm that wasn't just technique or instinct. It was soul. He blocked the left hook, dodged the cross, and responded with a perfect combination. 3 blows, each one with a specific destination. Diego Ramirez staggered for the first time. Caleb remained calm, without euphoria, just with precision. He landed 2 more blows. The crowd roared. The entire South Central region seemed to be inside that ring. There were 10 seconds left. The two, exhausted and bloodied, were still exchanging blows. Gong! The sound of metal cut through the air, but nobody moved. For a moment only silence existed, before the entire arena rose in applause, a sea of voices and vibrating flashes. The wrestlers returned to their corners. There was no arrogance, just respect. Caleb and Diego met in the center of the ring, eye to eye, breathing heavily. The announcer was holding up the judges' scorecards. After 5 rounds, we have a split decision. The crowd held its breath. The winner, who will represent the United States at the Olympics, is Caleb Johnson. The Staples Pavilion collapsed. Screams, tears, cameras. Raymond Moore lifted his pupil onto his shoulders. The boy who had been ridiculed as the delivery boy was now an American Olympic boxer. But unlike the fight against Ryan Coleman, Caleb didn't raise his arms. He knelt in the center of the ring, eyes closed, body trembling, soul at peace. It was a victory, yes, but it was also redemption. Hours later, at the press conference, he was still using ice on his eye. Her face was swollen, her lips were split, and she had the most genuine smile of her life. "Caleb, what's next?" asked an R&B reporter. Caleb thought for a second, looked at the microphone and replied, "Now, time to rest, then the Olympics. And after that, who knows?" The room laughed, but he wasn't joking. For the first time in the entire journey, Caleb Johnson didn't speak like the kid who wanted to prove something. He spoke like a man who finally knew who he was. The press conference had ended, but the echo of the cameras still vibrated in Caleb Johnson's ears. Alone in the Staples Pavilion locker room, he gathered his bandages, mouthguard, and the navy blue sweatshirt he had worn in all his fights, the same one that belonged to his father. The noise from the hallways was fading as the door opened silently. Diego Ramirez came on. His face was clean, but still marked by the struggle. For a moment, the two simply looked at each other. No words seemed necessary. Then Diego extended his hand. "You deserved it." Caleb shook his hand firmly, silently. There was respect there, a mutual recognition between two warriors who had pushed themselves to the limit. That handshake was worth more than any trophy. "See you later," said Diego, turning to leave. "You bet," Caleb replied with a slight smile. When the door closed, the silence returned, filled with a different kind of weight, the weight of accomplishment. Later that night, when the arena was nearly empty and the staff were packing up cables and chairs, Raymond Moore found Caleb sitting in the stands, watching the now empty ring, the same ring where his life had changed. "Proud of you, kid." Caleb smiled without turning his face away. "I wouldn't have been able to do it without you." Raymond shook his head slowly. Yes, you did. I just helped you find what was already in there. He paused, looking at the ring, and his voice came out lower. But I think it's time for me to take a step back. Caleb turned around, surprised. Like this? You don't need a coach anymore. You need a vision. Go be that vision for someone else. Before Caleb could protest, Raymond placed his hand on his shoulder. I promised your father I would help you find your way, not walk it for you. The silence between them was one of gratitude and understanding. At that moment, they both knew the promise had been fulfilled. The following week, Caleb was still processing everything when he received a message from an unknown number. It was short, direct, and impossible to ignore. You fought like a man. I didn't. It's my fault. Ryan Coleman. For a moment, Caleb just stared at the screen. The message seemed to bring to a close a cycle that had begun in that luxury academy where it all started. After a few seconds, he replied, "It's never too late to fight for real." There was no reply, but he knew the message had reached its intended destination. The following months brought the beginning of a new phase. Spring gave way to summer, and with it came new chapters, some personal, others historical. Caleb took a day off from training to attend Natalie's graduation ceremony, where she had just earned her nurse's badge. In the audience, he applauded as if he were watching the final of a fight. "Look at us," Natalie said, smiling, her badge gleaming in the light. Now they both save lives, each in their own way. The comment made her laugh, but Caleb sensed the weight and truth behind the phrase. With Olympic training intensifying, Caleb made an important decision to officially reopen the old gym of Marcus Johnson, his father. With the help of Raymond, Natalie, and donations from the South Central community itself, the old warehouse was given a new lease on life. The peeling walls were painted white and blue, the flooring replaced, and the punching bags substituted. Above the main door, a simple sign, Maplewood Legacy Boxing Center. The neighborhood children, who used to curiously peek through the windows, now trained there for free. The first pairs of gloves were donated by small local businesses, the bakery, the barbershop, the corner grocery store. For Caleb, each punch thrown there was a seed of hope. The National Boxing Network did a report on the reopening, but Caleb asked that the focus not be on him. It's not about me. It's about what comes next. Who will step into this ring when I'm no longer here? The phrase spread across social media, reaching more people than he ever imagined. The boy who once delivered packages was now delivering opportunities. As summer progressed, the U.S. Olympic Committee officially announced the athletes for the national team. Among the names, his, Caleb Johnson, middleweight. When he heard the confirmation, Caleb was in the gym, alone, cleaning the floor after the children's practice. He sat on the wooden bench, looked at the ring and smiled. It was no longer about proving something to someone. It was about representing everyone who had helped him get there. His father, Raymond, Natalie, South Central. The phone vibrated with messages, invitations, and interview requests. But for a moment, Caleb simply closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He could almost hear his father's voice, whispering somewhere among the memories. Men in the Johnson family don't back down. They stand up. And at that moment, under the dim lights of the Maplewood Legacy Boxing Center, Caleb Johnson was preparing for the biggest ring of all, the one where the heart beats louder than any drum. Caleb Johnson's photo now dominated the streets of Los Angeles, on the avenues, in the subway stations, in the windows of sporting goods stores. His face was plastered on billboards with the phrase, "From delivery driver to national hope." The nickname that had once been used as a joke had become an emblem, a symbol of overcoming adversity, of strength, of an America that recognized itself in that boy who started with nothing, but fought as if he had everything to lose. Letters began arriving from all over the country, from Seattle, Miami, Chicago, Phoenix, from young people who saw in Caleb living proof that dreams are not the privilege of those born with a silver spoon in their mouth. "If he could do it, maybe I can too," wrote a 14-year-old girl on a scented envelope from Oregon. "My dad is a mechanic, but I want to fight like you," wrote a boy from Detroit. These messages piled up on the counter of the Maplewood Legacy Boxing Center, now teeming with life. And yet, on that Thursday night, the gymnasium was empty. Classes had ended. Almost all the lights were off. Only a single spotlight remained on the ring. Caleb entered slowly, the sound of his own footsteps echoing on the freshly polished floor. He climbed up the ropes, sitting for a moment in the blue corner. The silence had weight. There, under that lonely light, he could see the whole path. The alleys of South Central, where he trained alone, the Coleman boxing arena, where he had been humiliated, the Staples Pavilion, where he became what he had always been inside. The journey was a mosaic of pain, pride, and memory. Caleb stood up and walked over to the punching bag. He raised his fists, took a deep breath, and delivered a single blow. Firm, safe. The sound reverberated through the empty academy, an echo that seemed to contain all the sounds of his life, the applause, the laughter, the advice, the silences. The bag swayed slowly, creaking in the current. He watched the movement, the leather swaying in the air, and saw his reflection in the mirror in front of him. The thin, shy teenager who was carrying packages had disappeared. There was a man there, an athlete with purpose, a symbol. But the look was still the same restless glint, the same fire inherited from Marcus Johnson, the same spirit that Natalie had nurtured with words of encouragement and care, the same determination that Raymond Moore had helped to polish like steel. Your phone vibrated. A short message from Olympic coach Harrison. "Training at 6 a.m. Total focus. New phase." Caleb smiled. The road ahead would be arduous. New struggles, new adversaries, new expectations. But for the first time, he felt completely ready. Not just in the body. More money. The next morning, the sun hadn't even risen yet when he arrived to open the gym. At the gate, a boy was waiting. I must have been about 12 years old. Disheveled hair, a worn-out backpack, a pair of old gloves hanging from his shoulder. He seemed nervous, almost recoiling as he saw Caleb approaching. "Are you Caleb Johnson?" His voice trembled, as if the question were bigger than him. Caleb smiled and unlocked the padlock. "It's me. Come on in." The boy looked around with the same wonder Caleb had felt years ago when he first stepped into a gym with his father. His eyes shone with hope and fear, a mixture Caleb knew well. "First time?" "Yes," the boy replied, almost whispering. Caleb crouched down to his level, opening the package with his worn gloves. "Great. That's how every great story begins." As he helped him bandage his hands, Caleb felt the weight of what was happening. It wasn't just a training session, it was a cycle that was coming to a close. That simple moment between master and apprentice was worth more than any medal. There, in the silence of the morning, he understood that the true legacy was neither Olympic gold nor headlines. The legacy was the impact. It was about extending a hand. It was to repeat the gesture that Raymond had made for him. It was a way of honoring what his father had started. The boy looked up, his hands already bandaged. "What if I'm not good?" Caleb smiled, the same serene smile he had inherited from Marcus. "So we train until we are." The boy nodded, taking a deep breath. Caleb led him to the ring. The two went up together. The sun began to stream through the windows, illuminating the blue canvas. And in that instant, between the past and the future, Caleb Johnson realized that his greatest battle had already been won. Because he hadn't just knocked out an opponent, he had conquered oblivion, turning humiliation into purpose. And above all, he transformed a coup into a legacy. If this story moved you, like, subscribe, and share. Because sometimes all someone needs to change their life is to see that a delivery driver can become the hope of an entire country.